Previews World. It's Wednesday. It's New Comic Book Day, which means it's time for Previews World Weekly, and it's January 1st. So Happy New Year, and actually a belated Happy Holidays. But as usual, I'm one of your hosts, Troy Jeffrey Allen.
And I'm Thea, and usually we're here to remind you guys to stop at a comic shop and get involved in what's happening in the world of comics. And if you're enjoying the show or tuning in for the first time, be sure to give us a like, share, subscribe, and follow to be sure to get all the nerd news. But this time, we have a special show.
We do, and you might notice that we have like 2 people who haven't said a word yet at the time.
Aliens!
So this is, of course, is the end of the decade, right? I have a couple smart, like say that technically it's not the end of the decade until the end of 2020. I was like, all right, fine, sure, whatever.
Yeah.
But
close enough.
As far as everyone's concerned, it's the end of the decade.
Yes.
Thank you very much, sir. And so we have like a little panel here of like, people who I think represent the tenets of nerddom, I'm gonna say, right?
Yeah,
we have
I'll take that.
Carrie Wood, the manga person. We have Thea, of course, who's the cosplay person, I will say. Myself,
Cosplay too.
she's cosplay too.
We're both cosplay
those
folks.
kind of go hand in hand,
Yeah.
like truthfully. But I had to,
Fair.
create
I don't
a
anime
separation here. Myself, I'm the old nerd. I experienced the 80s. And all of them.
Experience.
All of it, yeah. And we have the baby,
Yep.
who wasn't even, like, how old were you at the beginning of the decade?
I was a small yet rotund boy of 12 at the beginning of the decade.
Beautiful.
Millennials. There you go.
Small yet rotund. Very well done.
There you go. That's his name. But
That's his name. Yes, no. Yeah.
Oh yeah, what's your name, Kyle?
So, I'm Kyle. I'm the video editor here at Previews World, or a video editor here
Right,
at
there you
Previews
go.
World. I make sure Previews World and Talking Toys and our upcoming show, The Panel, all run seamless and smoothly, and you don't hear any mistakes or see anything or those magic cuts in between when a light goes off or a baby cries in the distance or when it
Thea
has
falls
you.
out of her chair.
Yep.
Or,
I like that. And actually, I also want to give a shout out to Johnny, who's been with us since the beginning of this show. Thank you very much, Johnny. And
Johnny is just a hand. Actually.
Johnny, exactly. He's just a hand. He's like cousin it.
That's the thing.
The thing. Cousin
Yeah.
it. The thing.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
I thought it was cousin it.
Kids
Cousin it
these
is the
days.
hairy guy.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
Yes.
okay. Anyway. All right, look. So, as you can tell, this is not going to be a formal episode. So, the decade, right? Like, in comics specifically, a lot of interesting things happened. Of course, Saga dominated the entire decade.
For sure.
Scott Snyder was pretty much associated with Batman like nonstop. The Fantastic Four didn't exist for a little while, and then they did. And then the X-Men kind of became
Wonder why Marvel got rid of the Fantastic Four and the X-Men for a while.
Yeah.
Gee, I wonder what possibly could have led to that creative decision.
Right, yeah. And I was actually going to say the
Yeah.
X-Men became the Inhumans for a period there. But on top of that, more interestingly, Dr. Octopus became Spider-Man, which was actually a fun storyline.
Right.
Like, just tons of cool stuff happening because it tends to happen over the course of 10 years.
Just a little bit.
And so we're just here to talk about like our favorite things throughout the decade. And of course, we asked our readers on top of that what their favorite things were. So we're just going to start off the bat with favorite manga or comic book of the decade. And it just so happens that Thea has a few of our audience's responses,
Yes,
our viewer
of course.
responses.
We like to have our audience participation. So we got a few answers from you guys in terms of your favorite comic books. Here are a few of them. First up, we have Killis Fox, who said that their favorite is Fight Club 2 and 3. Next up, we have Mad Me with Flashpoint and Hugh Hoist the Morning Star with Black Hammer. Tony Lawrence said Saga and followed very, very closely with Wicked and the Divine. And finally, Alpha Neckbeard with easily My Hero Academia. And we're all surprised,
Right.
because we all know who that is.
It's Amber. So.
It's Amber.
Alpha Neckbeard.
Former cover, but now you know it's Amber.
Yeah,
and it makes
there you
sense,
go.
right?
Yeah, okay.
So did any of these make any of your lists? Like,
Yeah.
Oh yeah? Which one?
My Hero Academia is
Okay, yeah.
definitely manga of the decade for a lot of reasons. I mean, one, it's very good.
That's a qualifier.
Yeah, it's very much a qualifier. But it's very much become a manga for people who don't like manga otherwise. It's a story about a kid who gets superpowers and decides to go to school to help train him to become a superhero. And the powers that a lot of his fellow students have are all really cool. They're very inventive. The storytelling is just so good. And so My Hero Academia debuted in 2014 and has
Wow. Has it been that
it
long?
took a couple years to sort of get going in the United States.
Oh, so it didn't you don't mean here? You mean
Yes,
Japan.
I mean in
Okay.
Japan
Okay.
it debuted in 2014, and it's become this phenomenon worldwide. Everybody likes My Hero Academia.
Right, yeah,
I've never met someone who has seen or read My Hero Academia and has been like, I didn't like that at all.
Right,
that
yeah.
person I don't think exists.
That's fair.
I think maybe at the first half of the decade, maybe people would have said Attack on Titan
Yes.
Oh,
was
yeah,
probably
exactly what
the
came to my
strongest,
mind.
the strongest manga of the decade. But basically, due largely in part to the fact that there was like a 4-year break
Was it really that long?
between the
Yeah.
first and second seasons
Yeah.
of Attack on Titan. And the fact that the manga creator made some, I would argue, questionable narrative decisions in the manga as it went on.
Oh, okay.
You had this like big peak for Attack on Titan and it just crashed and never really recovered.
Right.
But My Hero Academia came on and it came on strong, and it doesn't seem like it's going anywhere anytime
Yeah.
soon.
It doesn't,
it's
right.
still rolling for sure.
It's a kind of popularity that I don't think we have seen in a manga since Naruto and One Piece first
Yeah.
came
Oh,
out.
wow.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I think it will continue to be that level of a manga.
Would you
for folks.
say One Punch Man is also another big one from the decade?
Yeah, One Punch Man is definitely amongst, I don't know, top 5, top 10.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
One Punch Man for me was that was when I had to stop caveating my statements as, oh, I don't like anime and manga except for these ones.
Yeah.
And then One Punch Man came along, I was like, oh, I guess I
I
like
guess
this
I
now.
guess I
I
like
guess
it.
my
There you
weeb
go.
transformation is complete.
So okay.
I think, and the thing is, both One Punch Man and My Hero Academia share this, like, it's about heroes, it's about
Yeah.
superheroes
Right,
interacting
yeah,
in
yeah.
contemporary society
yeah.
and whatnot. So I think that's why it appeals more to, I guess you would say, the Western mentality of
Right, yeah.
comic books.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
yeah.
I actually watched. Kept getting pushed to watch One Punch Man and My Hero Academia, which I have not watched yet. And I know you're one of the people, Alpha Neckbird and you, have both been telling me I need to watch it. But like, I watched One Punch Man. I was like, oh, I instantly get this.
Yeah.
It's
Like
very
it just
fun.
latched. It just latched onto me
Yeah.
immediately. So, what about you, Thea? Any like comic book or manga of the decade that like stood out for you?
So we had somebody who said Saga and Wicked and Divine, and
Right,
I'm
yeah.
absolutely in both of those categories. Wicked and Divine a little more so. I haven't read as much of Saga, but I know that I'm going to,
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
and I'm going to love it because I love what little bit I've experienced. And the same thing with the Wicked and Divine. I mean, they're both so long running. There's so much story to get
Yeah,
involved
yeah,
with.
yeah.
So I'm like, okay, now I have to just like find a chunk and eat it. So yeah, but I mean, they're absolutely great stories, great concepts, and the
Right.
Wicked and the Divine for me, I always talk about how I like mythology, right? So this has its own level of
Yeah.
interesting mythology and bringing
Yeah.
it into the modern age and check all the Thea boxes, like
Yeah.
beautiful artwork and yeah.
You know what's so stupid? I have the first 2 trade paparbacks of Wicked and the Divine, and I haven't
touched
sat
them
down
yet?
and watched them,
Uh-oh.
or read them yet. Yeah, I know. I know.
Do it.
Actually, I'll give a little shout out to Jamie McKelvey too,
Yeah.
because he designed Captain Marvel. I think we're going to talk
Oh,
about that a little bit
absolutely.
later. Yeah, the new Captain Marvel, I should say. So yeah. No, that is a very much a popular one.
Oh,
And
yeah.
also
Yeah.
a shout out to Karen Gillan because she's another person that dominated the decade.
Yeah.
And we
Like-
know I don't like Karen Gillan.
Right, of course not. That's crazy talk. What about you, Kyle? Which makes your manga or comic book or
Well,
comic book of the
Yeah.
decade?
I think we have a sort of interesting crossroads here between the old and the new.
There you
That
go.
we have essentially the same comic of the decade.
Yeah,
Mine
we
is
do.
the Uncanny X-Force Dark Angel Kid Apocalypse
Yes,
saga.
absolutely.
That was for me I had already been obviously interested in heroes for a long time. I've been interested in superheroes for longer than I can remember, just in the day and age that we live in. And I had been reading comics for a while when that came around, and that started when I was a sophomore in high school, and that was yeah, I know. I know.
Be okay.
I know.
The entire
Oh, don't worry. We got more. We haven't even begun yet.
The entire table just turned into Kyle.
Yeah.
We all turned into the
Yeah.
Crypt Keeper.
Yeah.
I celebrated my 30th birthday the other day.
I'm 32. It's
I know.
okay. It's all right. We'll get through this together.
Yeah.
And that was essentially, I think that was my first really serious comic storyline, at least something that I was present for the entire time. I just remember being really struck by this sense of like they really felt screwed the entire time. Like here's this ragtag team of like this isn't like the A-list superhero. This is just like this
like the
it's the
rejects.
X.
Yeah.
Well, and Wolverine, because Wolverine.
Yeah, and Wolverine, yeah, but Wolverine is like
Wolverine,
the Psylocke, Deadpool, and here they are against this apocalyptic force, and they just barely make it out. And I remember being really struck with that at the time.
Right.
Nice.
No, I actually, we had a discussion last week, and I think we both kind of went Apocalypse, right?
Yep.
We went the Uncanny X-Force Rick Remender run, like particularly. And one thing I really love about that book is I've always been kind of a Deadpool fan, but like not in any real way, like more
fringe.
Right. Well, I mean, just more like I was around when he first showed up.
Right.
So therefore, I associated with him with like X-Men, like even though it was an X-Force book. And like it was interesting to see him evolve into this funny haha character, this kind of this Looney Tune cartoon type of thing.
Absolutely.
But X-Force goes the complete opposite direction with it, where he kicks it off like as like this comedic relief, but basically they're faced with like this. You basically have a bunch of murderers on the team. That's what the X-Force is in this particular run, and they've all become murderers because something else has made them into murderers. You have Archangel turned by Apocalypse, Wolverine and Deadpool Weapon X, Phantom X Weapon X, Psylocke because of Siege Perilous. Like all these characters have been transformed in some way, shape, or form. And
I love Phantom X on that.
No, I
run.
love
I
it.
just gotta say,
He's
Phantom
a lot
X
of
is a
fun.
really
Yeah.
cool character.
Right. Just the king of misdirection. I love
Yeah.
Phantom X. But like it was interesting because like all these murderers are faced with like a situation where they basically have to kill a kid who they think is going to become Apocalypse. They know he's going to become Apocalypse. And so it kind of creates this sort of like this debate about, is it the chicken or the egg? Like, are you always a murderer or are you born into one? And can this child be rehabilitated?
Right.
And Deadpool, to his credit, is the one that's like, I ain't killing no kids. Like, just straight up,
about
forget
right.
it. Like, I don't care what he has done to you, Archangel, you're nuts. And it kind of creates the series goes for about like 20 or 30 issues.
Yeah.
But like rolling forward, it just becomes like this continuing tale of like, where do your morals lie? Where does the end stop? It's got a great thing with like Wolverine and his son. Like, it's just good. It's just so awesome. And the art was great, Jerome Opina, just great artists all the way through. So, okay, so those are our manga comic book picks.
Yeah.
Right.
There we go.
And so we're gonna give you guys a little sneak peek at some of the stuff that's coming up in 2020. Here's Kanto, and I know like Kanto's been one of your picks for a long
this
time.
is a great book, so yeah, absolutely check it out. Trailer for Kanto.
There you go. Trailer for Kanto, and that's actually the trade paperback for Volume 1, which came out in 2019, but the trade won't be released until 2020. But you should pick it up now because there's a sequel coming in 2020. So get on the ground floor before, before more people find out about it, basically, because it was kind of a surprise hit in the past year. So let's move on to Comic Book Creator of the Decade. We already made some passing comments about Kieran Gillen and a few others, right? But what have our viewers been saying? Who were the comic creators of the decade?
So we've got some viewer responses. Once again, most popular guys, We've got Jeff Schwab with I'm going with Ed Brubaker. For me, it's mainly Image Comics work, Velvet, The Fade Out, Kill or Be Killed, etc., and Marvel work, various Captain America series. Mike Hodges said Jeff Lemire and Robert Venditti. Sean Starcher, Scott Snyder, and it's not even close. And then finally, Kimo Hinokan with Scotty Young. The I Hate Fairyland saga is bar none the most deserving.
Cool.
And of course,
Yes.
Johnny. We're all surprised that Johnny agrees with
Johnny,
that.
Johnny has a small collection of Scotty Young figures.
Yeah.
Like ever, it is
Small.
growing. Yeah. I'm gonna kick this one off just because like he hasn't had a lot of like stories under his belt, but he's done a lot of covers, and I discovered him in the last decade.
Okay.
James Stucco.
Okay.
He did a book called Alien Dead Orbit, which is the first time I ever had like discovered anything by him.
Cool.
And the best way I could describe his art style is like it's Jeff Darrow meets Art Adams and Carrie. Who's the creator of Ghost in the Shell? It's a Masumi.
I'm gonna get dragged for not being able. Shiro Masamune.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. But and I might be right. No, I think no, you're absolutely right. I just need to hear the words like said correctly, actually. But like, yeah, he's just a phenomenal artist. Like the level of detail in his work. Like I picked up a copy of his book Sobek, which also came out last year. And yeah, it's just I could have picked a writer. Like I had like so many people I wanted to mention. But Stucco, I was just like, I discovered him in the decade. Like I had never seen anything from him previously. Like, so that's my pick. Like he's like H.R. Geiger and all these other great, like hyper detailed artists back to back. So, Carrie, what is your pick for creator of the decade?
My favorite, I think, is gonna be Chip Zdarsky.
Okay.
Who has done a lot of work with Marvel, but has also done a lot of work with Image, both as an artist and as a writer. And I think that sort of distinguishes him from a lot of other folks in the field because he is as successful of an artist as he is as a writer. And you don't get a ton of people even attempting to do both. And he's out here being successful at both. Known, I think, with Image Sex Criminals with Matt Fraction, which I think is a runner-up for my favorite comic of the decade. It's so good.
Okay, nice.
And that's, I think, coming back with like its final story arc in 2020, and I don't know what I'm going to do with myself after that wraps up. All my favorite comics, like, finished within the last year, and I'm mad about it. Because I'm like, well, what am I going to read? But Zdarsky has also written a bunch of really great things. He did a really incredible run on Jughead over at Archie.
Yeah, right.
He also did a run on Howard the Duck. He's got an ongoing run on Daredevil.
Right, yeah, as a writer, just a writer.
Just as a writer. And his stuff with Daredevil and then recently with Invaders and Spider-Man Life Story has shown that he has the capacity to be more than just this like funny, snarky guy. And then he also did Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man, which was super good. He's just like, he's proven to be a really diverse talent in the field. Doing humor as well as he does dramatic stuff. His Daredevil run has gotten me to read Daredevil. And Daredevil is not a character I have historically cared that much about. But yeah, his run on Daredevil is super good. If you missed his stuff with Howard the Duck or Jughead or Spider-Man, you should definitely check that out.
I remember when his Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man dropped, the positive word of mouth was just sort of like, oh, maybe I should pay attention to this guy. Because I had not been paying attention to him previously. Ironically enough, he did like two of my childhood favorites. He did Jughead and Spider-Man. So I'm like, okay, I'm in the correct lane for this type of writer. I've read his Daredevil. It's great. And I'm reading Spider-Man's Life Story, which he did like currently. I'm a little behind, but I'm currently reading it. And like, it's just like a great concept. And like he does balance like the dark and the funny and the action and the suspense and all that other stuff. So yeah, that's actually a good pull. I like that. What about you, Thea? What is your creator of the decade?
We're all going to be very surprised.
Are we?
Because it's Kieran Gillen.
No, but I mean it's super valid, right?
It's super valid, and everybody loves those works. And of course, he's been around for a minute too, and he's also done work for Marvel, which I thought was pretty cool. Right? He did some Uncanny X-Men and Young Avengers work, and of course, he's behind my current favorite, which is Die.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Now, Gillen's, he's been around for a while. I actually encountered his, he did a run on Sword, which is like this offshoot of X-Men that was established in Astonishing. And it's just like Beast and his girlfriend. But it was so good.
I love that.
Like, it was just so well done.
Take that little piece of
Right.
Yeah.
And just expound on it.
Just like if it works, it works.
If it works, it works.
Oh man.
And just put them in
Check
space.
that out.
Right.
Of course.
What about you, Kyle? What was yours?
So for me, there's no one else, I think, for a creator of the decade that I've enjoyed their work more than Leslie Hung, who is the artist on Snot Girl, along with Brian Lee O'Malley,
Yeah. There you go.
who is one of my also faves, because I discovered Scott Pilgrim this decade as well, which ended when I was a sophomore at high school.
Oh my god.
You're just gonna keep saying that.
Yeah,
aren't
I am.
I can feel my
very good.
bones.
Yeah.
Oh, I actually might be wrong. I think it ended later than that because I discovered it when I was a freshman. So anyway, so the time streams all.
you? I mean, I definitely know the final chapter was in the decade.
Yeah,
decade.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
think the movie was in. Well, yeah, the movie was
The movie
definitely
was
in this decade.
2010, I
It was
think.
Yeah.
2010.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, because the series had already ended when the movie came out. So,
Right.
yeah. Anyway, so Leslie Hung, I discovered her art in college at a sort of transition point. I've been drawing for my whole life. It's one of my all-time favorite things to do. And I had fallen off of it for a long time at that point, and then sort of through that and some other pieces of inspiration, I got way back on it, and she has been her Instagram page is bookmarked on my computer.
That's cute.
And she has a wonderful expressive style that's sort of this cross between a manga style and a more traditional comic-y style, which I don't know, it's one of those things where describing an art style is always so hard, especially when describing why you like it. It's just you sort of look at it and it's like this instinctual thing of just love it.
Yeah.
I went to art school and they didn't even give me the correct information to
Oh,
be able
yeah.
to express everything
Yeah,
that you
yeah.
feel when you look
Right.
at a
Yeah.
piece of art,
And just when you like it, you
just
like it,
feel
right?
it.
Yeah.
No, actually, the initial. Well, I know I haven't read Snot Girl, but I have friends who love Snot Girl,
Oh, same.
and
Yep.
I've seen the cover, and it's pretty immediate. You're
Yeah.
just sort of like, oh, that's interesting.
Yep.
So yeah, to her credit, no, that's a good call. I actually would not have thought of that. New story of the decade, right? So. I don't even think we really need to read any reactions from viewers. Ultimately, everyone said Stan Lee's passing, but of course there was a lot of other stuff that happened within a decade, of course, right?
sure.
So around the table, I'm gonna start actually with you, Thea. What was your new story of the decade? Was it Stan Lee's passing?
Yeah.
Okay, no, I mean,
it's just
that's
such a
valid, though.
big
Like-
Yeah,
thing,
it's very
you know?
hard to argue.
Yeah, I mean, it touched everyone in
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
nerddom, right?
Right, yeah,
in
yeah.
one capacity or another, and that was just a lot.
Yeah, I agree. I feel it was very telling. I think one of the things in the decade, I'm going to touch on this a little bit later, but during the course of the decade, we started having these conversations that were becoming increasingly divisive for whatever reason, right? And it was really interesting to me that when Stan Lee passed, it was you would think all the guns got put down for
Right.
about a hot second,
some
you know what I mean?
Insane.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
a really good call.
Like-
Yeah, just looking at the internet when that happened was just like, wait, what? We're
Right.
capable of not being at each other's throats about
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, I mean, I think the good thing about that, the positive thing out of his passing is there is this kind of this universal anchor that a lot of nerddom had. And it kind of it is the bridge ultimately. And I think that's really what he was always angling
Yeah.
for.
Of course.
He was like an ambassador of the industry. He was an not just Marvel, but just of comic books period.
Absolutely.
And I've seen a lot of people say he was everybody's uncle.
Yeah.
His
It's very rare to see a figure as undivisive as Stan Lee.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
extraordinarily rare.
No, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a testament to him. So what about you, Carrie? Was there a new story of the decade for you?
Yeah, for me, aside from what we just discussed with Stan, at the very tail end of 2009, Disney bought Marvel.
Yeah. All right.
And then in 2012, Disney purchased Lucasfilm and gained the
Right.
rights to Star
Yeah,
Wars.
yeah.
So that to me is, I think, it's something that has shaped the entertainment industry, obviously, but it has also shaped comics.
Oh yeah.
Because when Disney purchased Star Wars and Marvel started publishing Star Wars comic books again, I think a couple years after that,
Yeah,
because they
right.
had to wait for.
I think it was I want to say it was 2015. I could be
Yeah,
wrong
because
about
they had
that.
to basically wait out, because Dark Horse still had the
Right,
rights
yeah.
to that
Right,
time.
right.
But by doing that, Disney introduced a new canon. And all of this extended universe stuff, all these novels, all of these old comic books that had existed for decades previously suddenly became non-canon.
Right,
They
yeah.
became relegated to what's now called legends material.
Right. Yeah.
And whether you like that or not, there's a lot of debate about Star Wars.
Right, yeah.
I am a fan of Star Wars.
Yeah, yeah.
I have a Star Wars
I was
tattoo.
gonna say.
I am a huge fan of Star Wars. I like. For me, I don't even care if it's canon or not.
Right.
Like, I'm just like, give me Star
Just more
Wars.
Star
Yeah,
Wars.
yeah,
please.
exactly. I'm with you on that.
Inject
by
it
far.
into my veins.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, the more Star Wars, the better. No
Right.
matter the timeline, no matter the context.
Right.
Gimme.
But I do think that since Star Wars comics have now been published by Marvel again, for the most part, they've been pretty cool.
No, they actually have been. Actually, your boy Kieran Gillen is like one of the writers
Yeah.
of Darth Vader, right?
Yeah, the Vader comic especially is
Yeah.
really good.
Right,
but
right,
there's
right.
been a lot of other stuff that have just been like really cool that are now expanding on the reestablished canon in new and exciting ways. So
Yeah.
I do think that between the Marvel and the Star Wars acquisition, what Disney has done has rippled throughout all
absolutely.
forms of
Yeah.
Oh
media.
yeah, definitely,
So,
definitely. For me, it's also like the fact that it makes it a little more easy to connect with the younger generations.
All right, yeah, of course, right.
Revamping
right.
stuff, making it a new story that they can grab onto. You
yeah.
know? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like. Look, I'm one of those people. I'm still a little salty about the EU thing. Like, I mean, and like, I'm not even like
that's
the
fair.
most dyed-in-wool, like knee-deep Star Wars fan.
Right.
But like my beyond, once I watched the movies, the only thing that could like satiate like that need for more Star Wars was the Dark Horse books, to be honest, right? And like a couple of Rogue Squadron like novels on top of that. And so like and yeah, okay, and then N64 video game.
Yeah, I was about to say, the game is really good too.
Really good.
But that said, like, the reality that we're in now is that, like, those are legends. And truthfully, like, I read, first of all, Mark Waid's Princess Leia comic
Oh my God.
is actually one of my favorite books of the last decade. And, like, that concept alone of, like, look, Alderaan got blown up. We're talking about the Marvel series, of course.
Yeah.
Alderaan got blown up, and like there really wasn't any fallout from that in any of the movies, really, And so she goes on this mission to like basically secure the culture of Alderaan, and I just thought that was a brilliant concept, and I loved that book. Same thing with Jason Aaron's Star Wars, which I didn't read all the way to the end, but like from get-go, the John Cassidy artwork, I was like, oh, this is like the movies, like you know what I mean? It was just like that, you know. And I've heard great things about.
Star Wars.
It felt
right?
Star Wars, right? Like in a very palpable way that like I didn't even think was possible outside of film.
Right.
You know what I mean? So complete and total hats off to them. Like it's happening whether we like it or not.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, regardless of how you feel about the main trilogy of films that is now just finished over the last decade. We've gotten a lot of really good Star Wars content since Disney's acquisition.
Yeah.
Between the comics, between some of the new novels. I hear Jedi Fallen Order is very
Yeah, I heard
good.
it's very
I
good as
haven't
well.
gotten to sit down and play it yet. The Mandalorian is
Yeah.
the talk of entertainment right now.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, God, the theme parks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got to fly the Millennium Falcon this year.
I'm so jealous.
I can't complain about that.
I mean, that's totally fair.
Yeah.
The experience.
The
Yeah.
experience, right? And I mean,
Yeah.
it's just prolonging that experience for
Yes.
everybody. So, what about you, Kyle? Kyle, what was the news story of the decade for you? I don't know. I said your name.
I think I
right.
agreed. Call.
Call. I want to call you Call the Conqueror. For some reason.
Nailed it.
I agreed with everyone that Stan Lee's passing was
no, it's totally
I really racked my brain for like a news story that really, and I think my first reaction was Disney buying Marvel just because that transcends comics in general. That's the entire landscape of entertainment that
Right, yeah.
I think when we look back upon the 2010s, I think when Disney owns every media entity on the planet and we're all working in the Disney salt mines, we're going to be looking back in those 2010s as, oh, that's when it all started.
Right. We're all being the minds wearing mouse ears.
Yep.
It's true.
Yeah, no, I think that like this decade alone, like we saw a lot of upheaval of like the industry in a lot of ways. Like I mean, there was like of course like the digital really kind of took hold in the last decade, of course.
Yeah.
And on top of that, like I said, we've had conversations around diversity, we've had conversations around inclusion, which is the same thing ultimately. And like that did change the landscape. Look, Thor became a woman for a little while, you know.
It was dope.
And it was actually good, you know what I mean?
Jane Foster as Thor was awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I can't hate on that. Like, you know, were they all great? No. But we also got Miles Morales and a couple other things that were like, you know, I think were a good step in the direction for the industry as a whole.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I will touch on this again once we get to
I
Hero.
know you will.
Yes.
So, on that note, do we have any Doctor Who fans at the table? Thea? Johnny? Okay,
Johnny.
Johnny's not at the table.
Although I am woefully behind.
I mean, you know,
I'm
it's
basically
okay.
my roommate is watching from the most modern
The
beginning of the
13th?
series
Oh.
up through
Eighth Doctor?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I've basically been
a lot
waiting
of
for her
Doctor
to
Who
get
gets
to the most recent stuff that I've missed, so I can hop back in there and get back on the TARDIS, as
Right.
it were. But yeah,
No, okay, see, I thought, is the 13th one not the new one?
No, she is the newest one.
Yes.
But like in terms of modern Doctor
Oh,
Who.
Yes.
okay, gotcha.
starts-
Okay, I see what you
yeah,
mean. 'Cause it was
as
cross-
opposed to the gap from the historical.
from the previous
Yeah.
versions to like the more
From the
recent
Legends
ones.
Doctor Who.
Okay.
Yes.
The Legends Doctor Who.
The Legends of Doctor Who. So I bring that up because Titan has a new series, and they're actually taking the 10th Doctor and the 13th Doctor and putting them in a crossover starring the Weeping Angels, which I do know is a Doctor Who thing.
Yeah.
So, so check out this trailer for Doctor Who from Titan Comics dropping in 2020. And that's Doctor Who, the 13th Doctor, #1 from Titan Comics, and actually that drops January 8th. So, you know, if you're a Doctor Who fan, check it out. And like I said, it features the Weeping Angels, which happens to be a villain in the Doctor Who franchise, am I right?
Yep.
Okay, yes. Because that would have ruined my segue.
Question mark?
At least like a recurring monster?
Yeah,
I don't
okay.
know that I would qualify them as like a
A villain, yeah.
What's like,
per
what,
se.
like, why wouldn't it be qualified as a villain? Like, is it just because what are monsters more like
Well,
is it the goals?
I think a monster acts on instinct
Yeah.
and
Right.
a villain plots.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right, no,
I'm
that's,
with you.
They're
Yeah.
not. They don't really have like the Weeping Angels don't have character arcs. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
Like
no
they're-
real like motive other than like how
Huh.
they function.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, I'm with that. I like that. Actually, that's a good distinction. All right, well, actually, since we're on the topics of like villains who plot, right?
Yeah.
We have villains of the decade.
Yes,
and
we
what did
do.
some of the viewers say?
So here we go, round 3 of viewer responses. First up, we have Joey Gillian, who said Dr. Octopus. Next, J.A. Lopez from DC Comics, Harley Quinn. From Doctor to pop icon, everybody knows Harley. And finally, Cassie Mad Zapper Wallace with Thanos.
And Cassie's commented before, and I just love her name.
Yeah.
So of course, like, all right, Thanos. We're probably going to talk about that at some point. It is
Yeah.
where I've got to.
Inevitable.
Yeah.
Harley.
Inevitability of Thanos.
Harley. Harley's almost beaten me down. There's so much Harley in
There's a
existence, right?
lot of Harley.
But to
going
be fair,
on.
there
Yeah.
has been a lot of Harley story arc
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
character
No, there has.
development.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard for me. I'm sort of like she's bridging villain into hero now.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, she's been sort of an anti-hero for
Largely.
For quite
almost
some
her entire history at
Right.
this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Harley, I think for me, hit like a saturation point
Yeah. Yeah.
pretty early on. But I also feel the same way about Batman
Yep.
this
Yeah,
decade.
that's fair.
Yep.
That's fair. Yeah.
Many
Yeah.
bat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel that way
A lot
about
of Batman
Deadpool.
comics. Yeah, I feel
Like
that way
I kind of had
about
enough of
Deadpool as
Deadpool
well.
by Deadpool 2. I was like, okay,
We're good.
that's enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I actually want to point out Dr. Octopus because I mentioned earlier Superior Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah.
Me personally, that got me back into Spider-Man. Like they did a whole body swap thing.
It was super cool.
And it was so cool. And I know people don't necessarily always love Dan Slott, but Dan Slott wrote that story arc and it was great.
Yeah.
And like
Even the second run
Yeah.
of Superior Spider-Man.
Actually, I think we're on our third run now.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, or this is the second run maybe.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it was just interesting to see Dr. Octopus pretending to be Peter Parker and this character that he hates for for any number of reasons.
Yeah.
And then he's kind of like, it's hard being Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Like,
to the realization.
Right.
Yeah.
But also, it was also just fun to see the interactions with it, because at this point, Spider-Man was firmly on the Avengers team.
Yeah.
And like, it was interesting to see their interactions with Peter Parker during that point in time, because he would just say these megalomaniacal things. And like, everyone would be kind of like,
That's
so
a little odd.
we're going to deal with this bigger thing here, but that's interesting that you said that.
Yeah.
And like, it was just fun. It was just
Yeah.
a fun string of things during the course of time, and it made it all that much sweeter when Peter Parker became Spider-Man again.
Yeah.
But enough about that.
Superior Spider-Man outfit was so cool.
It was also a cool costume. No, it was a
Yeah.
cool costume, right? And like you said, he does have a new series out right now.
Yeah.
So, but in terms of villains of the decade, what are your picks? I'm gonna go with you first, Thea.
Yeah, you know, Thanos. How could it not be?
Right.
I mean, he's really been the lurking menace
Right,
behind
yeah.
so much.
No, absolutely.
Comics and movies, otherwise, you know, all this stuff. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
no.
it's hard to get away from him.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, as someone who read, I mean, of course the movies, obviously, right? Like, I mean, he was omnipresent even when he wasn't even in
Yeah.
the movie itself,
Right.
right? But you knew he was around. But like, on top of that, like, you know, he had a huge part to play in the Infinity story that Jonathan Hickman did. On top of that, you know, my personal favorite, Johnny's personal favorite story arc, Thanos Wins, which also came out in the last
Yeah.
decade. Also recontextualizing his relationship with Gamora, like in light of the movies, and like how it's more of a toxic, abusive thing. I thought was actually really interesting.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it was always there, but I don't think I could be wrong, but I don't think like the comics ever gave it direct lip service until
Sure.
Infinity War came
Yeah.
out. So yeah, all these things like kind of created like this perfect storm of evil.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You
yeah.
also had this mystique of Thanos at the beginning of the decade, especially for people who are less interested in comics, of
Yes.
those post-credit scenes
Oh,
of
right.
Thanos is coming, and then having that payoff at the end of the decade of, oh, that's what he did when he got here.
Yeah.
Right, yeah,
And
yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's really fascinating going back and looking at those, like the Avengers post-credit scene of before they knew what they were really gonna do with
Right, yeah,
Thanos.
yeah.
Because the post-credit scene is very like schlocky villainy of like, haha, now I am going to get the Infinity Stones. And then of course Thanos becomes like the character that he becomes once they actually get a better idea of
Right,
what
yeah,
they're
yeah.
going to do with
the
it.
Yeah.
direction they're going to
Yeah.
go with it. Yeah, no,
But
absolutely.
the planting of the seed was so good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So good. And of course, if you were anybody who reads comics and you saw that, you were like,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think
Such a good little thing.
the ultimate irony here is that like Thanos, if I remember correctly, is kind of a Darkseid knockoff, Darkseid knockoff.
A little bit, yeah. Mhm.
And so it's kind of
Fair.
interesting to see one kind of take over like the cultural conversation,
Yeah.
and ultimately Darkseid is like kind of, you know, I mean,
Look.
he's a great comic book villain.
Look, Darkseid is.
Darkseid just is,
Darkseid
right? That's
is.
hey, there you go. I like that, Mr. Miracle. reference. So what about you, Carrie? What was your villain?
Like, I also gotta say Thanos. Like,
Yeah.
there's no competition. This was the decade of Thanos.
Yeah.
Between again the Infinity comic books, the Infinity Wars comic books, the Thanos Wins comic books, and then the omnipresence in the media, where everyone's starting with that post-credit scene in the first Avengers film, which I cannot believe only came out in 2012 because
Yeah, I
it
know.
feels like it came out
Came out
50
so long
years
ago.
ago.
I
Yeah.
know.
Where you get this glimpse and you're like, oh, they're building to something. And we have this 21 film saga that ultimately builds up to this final battle against Thanos. The fact that like we have just like an endless amount of memes on the internet about
Yep.
Thanos.
Oh, man.
Yep.
That Thanos and the snap and the
Right.
dusting just became just this like pop culture moment.
There's
Yeah.
like images of Thanos being Salt Bae.
Yeah,
like,
of
like they
course.
just started
Yeah.
floating around. There was Daddy Thanos, which I was really uncomfortable with.
I'm uncomfortable
Like-
with anything with that piece of terminology.
Totally
attached to it.
uncomfortable with that.
Yeah.
But this is what happens when the internet latches onto things. It just becomes something else entirely.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's just to echo everything that everyone else has said. This was the decade of Thanos.
This is a decade. Now, actually, Dr. Octopus is not my pick, but I'm gonna go to Kyle first because was it also Thanos or did you go
Well,
a different
I feel like the
direction?
correct answer is Thanos. But,
Correct
and
answer.
so I was trying to find something else to say besides Thanos. I do like I haven't paid that much attention to Harley Quinn through the decade, but the stuff that I see of Harley Quinn when she like breaks away from the Joker and does her own thing, I think that's always awesome.
Yeah.
Like, is just Harley Quinn as a character who tied to an abusive relationship, I think sometimes gets in that little like gray area of like, I get what you're doing, but so like that new Harley Quinn show on the DC streaming service,
DC Universe.
the DC Universe, that stuff I haven't watched a full episode because I don't have the streaming service, but of the clips that I've seen, like that, it was really funny. Like I really liked it. My I guess pick would be I've enjoyed the Batman Who Laughs. Just for two reasons.
Fair.
Well, for his.
You got Johnny's
Johnny's like,
that's the coolest name. The Batman Who Laughs is just that. I love names like that just grab your attention. It's like, oh, what is the Batman? Who is the Batman Who Laughs? But that's just been an entertaining villain. Just I feel like at a certain point, Batman's been duking it out with people for a long time, and I feel like that it just reached that natural evolution of. He has all the skills of Batman, but with the moral compass of the Joker.
Right.
So I've enjoyed that. It's fun.
That's a concept. I think the Batman Who Laughs. Like I've always been a big fan of like Bassman. That's a whole nother
Oh, here we go.
Everyone's favorite hero.
Batman is his own worst enemy, and so I really like the idea of the Batman Who Laughs because of that.
It's an idea that I think could have gone very poorly. Because it sounds like something a 12-year-old would have come up with.
It sounds like something I would have done at the beginning of the decade.
But it's been executed in such a way that makes it very compelling.
Yes.
So,
absolutely.
They did it right.
I'm going to go off the beaten path here, and I'm going to say the real villain of the decade were hot takes.
Isn't that a hot take in itself?
It is a hot take. Well, see, and that's the awful irony of all this, right? Because if you have an opinion about hot takes, ultimately it is a hot take.
Right.
But I just I think there's a very thin line between debate and just like nonsense. Like, you know what I mean?
Debate and trolling.
There's been a lot of nonsense.
For lack of a better term,
of
trolling. Yeah. And I kind of feel like we kind of hit the point, the saturation point, or like we hit the penultimate point. No, I'm using all the wrong words.
Yes.
But we hit the point where like the hot take, whether it was garbage or not, became the conversation.
Yeah.
And
I mean, people have entire careers of they just say hot takes.
Right.
I think a lot of people who like you'll see. People get flamed on Twitter for like, oh, can you believe this person said this stupid thing? Their career is getting you to say that about them. You're playing right into their hands.
Johnny just fandom became the
fandom
villain.
itself became.
See, I'm not going to co-sign that. I can't co-sign
No,
that.
I will co-sign that just because, particularly with Star Wars, we saw it worse with Star Wars than we did with any other.
I mean, it
thing.
would happen with Star Wars.
Yeah, it would happen with Star Wars. But I mean, I think we saw a lot of unfortunate things come out of fandom over the last decade.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah.
When it comes to people just not being able to just sit and read and enjoy something, where they have to take a hot take on something before they even
before it even
comes releases.
Out.
I mean, you mentioned Thor becoming a woman.
Yeah.
People had endless hot takes about that and how that was destroying masculinity and and it's just like, well, if you actually read the book, you'd have seen that, wow, the Jane Foster turn on Thor was actually really well written, and it was really compelling.
And on top of that, like I actually prefer that it's a character that has history with the character.
Yeah.
I think I think I take issue when it's just some random pull and then they just do a swap out just to check some box.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's Jane Foster, I'm like, I'm actually I like that. I like that as a concept. Yeah, I just I think that you pinpointed it perfectly. I feel like in the last decade, like particularly in comics, I mean, we can say this about everything, but particularly in comics, hot takes have made a lot of things not fun anymore.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that, look, ultimately the goal is for these things to be fun. Like, I think at the end of the day, that's the lasting impact all these things
They're
have.
comic books.
They're comic books, right.
They're comic books.
Right.
We're reading stories about guys who wear their underwear on the outside and fling around the city in capes, and it's nonsense. It's complete nonsense. And people turn it into something far more serious than it has to be. Every time someone's like, well, this ruined my childhood. Like, shut up. No, it didn't.
Yeah, no,
That drives me
completely-
nuts.
I remember watching the. This is kind of a tangent, but like I remember watching the. Have you ever seen the People versus George Lucas, the documentary?
Oh,
I've
yep.
seen pieces of it. I haven't sat
I've
down
watched
and
it.
watched the
Yeah,
whole thing.
I think the best argument against something can ruin your childhood is that documentary because it creates like it provides a nice even explanation of like the nature of the Star Wars relationship, the nature of the relationship between Star Wars and its fans.
Yep.
And it finds fault in George Lucas,
Sure.
but it also finds fault in the fans themselves.
Yeah.
And the only reason I say that I can't really co-sign the thing is ultimately I kind of like the fandom thing is like I feel some people, I catch people sometimes using it to just swing at every type of fan.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? And that's where I'm like, all right, okay, like, let's calm down.
Yeah.
But I mean, look, there's plenty of blame to go around. I
Yeah.
completely agree.
Correct.
There's plenty of blame around. And like, I think ultimately hot takes,
Yes.
just made what's supposed to be fun uncomfortable for no reason.
Yeah.
Like, so. But let's switch it up to heroes of the decade, right?
Yes.
So, Thea, what are some of our viewers saying about the hero of the decade?
Hero time. So here we have some of the favorite heroes of the decades from you guys out there. The decade. Decades? Decade.
Decade.
Singular decade.
There you
All
go.
right, first up, Chase Merriman with Batman because there's like 10 different titles of Batman. Not wrong.
Not wrong.
Quadri Breland with Miles Morales.
No, fair.
Very good.
Super fair.
Andy Schwartz with Bloodshot.
I
Solid.
respect this answer.
Yes. And finally, this decade was Wonder Woman's time to shine. New explorations of her genesis with The Last Amazon and The Legend of Wonder Woman. 2 stellar runs on her main series by Greg Rucka and G. Willow Wilson. A full-length cinematic experience that brought new fans and fun all-ages representation with DC superhero girls from Charlie B.
So I am completely going to co-sign Wonder Woman. That was actually my pick. Was
Me
Wonder
too.
Woman. Yeah. And I know definitely like you're a fan of Wonder Woman as well.
No.
But like, and we can go back and forth about this. But like I think like okay, yeah, clearly the movie came out, and I think what the movie did was interesting because it caught. In a weird way, it caught the mainstream up to what fans already knew about Wonder Woman in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? Like this idea that like, she is the peacekeeping alternative, but she will snap somebody's neck if she has to. But that's
Relatable.
But that's right. But that's the thing that distinguishes her from Batman and Superman, right?
sure.
Like, and I think that it was nice to see what I think was a character that's been largely taken for granted, not really by comic book fans, but by the mainstream.
Oh, absolutely,
Like
for sure. For
people to
sure.
finally appreciate that character. And also Gal Gadot was a great representation of that.
Yep.
Beyond that, there was Grant Morrison's Earth One, which I absolutely loved, which again just kind of like took the Marston's approach to Wonder Woman and like gave it a modern spin, which I thought was really good. Then there was Brian Azzarello and Cliff Chang's Wonder Woman run as well, which boosted up, like kind of just changed up her origin a little bit, made it a little bit more of a scandal, a little bit more tragic.
Right.
And yeah, it was just a good era for her. And on top of that, I think Flashpoint was this year, so you got the Aquaman versus like the Amazons thing, which was nuts. Like it was just a good year. It was a good decade for Wonder Woman. So
for sure.
Yeah. What about you, Carrie?
I think you're expecting me to say Carol Danvers.
I am.
And I'm not going to say
Oh
Carol
wow.
Danvers.
Okay.
I will,
Ooh.
however, say rather than Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan.
All right.
Is very much my hero of the decade. She debuted in 2013.
Okay.
She is the first Muslim superhero to headline her own comic book.
Okay,
She's
yes.
hardly the first.
Thank you for the
yeah,
distinction,
she's
yeah.
not the first Muslim superhero, but she is the first one to headline her own book. In a period of time where Muslims in society are still very much maligned
Yes.
Yeah.
by certain other sects of society in really unfortunate ways. I thought the way that Kamala was written to incorporate her heritage, to incorporate her religion in a way that just made it normal.
Yeah.
That this is just her every day. That this is what her family is, and this is what they do, and there's nothing odd about it. There's nothing terroristic about it.
Right, yeah, yeah.
This is it's just their religion and their culture, and they explore it in a very normalizing way, which I thought was great. But also, she has a really cool power set, and like, she can shapeshift and all this other stuff. And the way that she looks up to Carol for inspiration is great. And then the way that she had to reconcile what Carol did in Civil War II, that they were on opposing sides in Civil War II.
Sure.
Civil War II was not my favorite comic of the decade.
I don't think it was a lot for a lot of people.
No. Basically, for what it did to Carol's character, ugh. Anyway, I mean, over the last 7 years, Kamala has very much become a centerpiece of the Marvel Universe. She is featured prominently into many of their big yearly crossover events, and next year she'll be one of the main characters. She'll be sort of the center character of the Avengers video game being published by Square Enix.
That's right.
And it's just like, it's been so cool. I've been following her really since day one, and absolutely,
That's
Kamala
awesome.
Khan is my character of the decade.
Good.
I don't think I really got Kamala Khan until they did a Secret War crossover with her, and then like I kind of felt myself kind of being like, oh, I actually kind of like this character.
Yeah, she's super cool.
Right, like it was just interesting to see her like scrambling, like, you know, of course there's this world-ending event, like that's just overarching like everything. And it was interesting to see her scramble, not knowing at all what's going on, but like really she was like the community hero.
Yeah.
You know, and like her whole thing was like just protect what she can while she can.
Yeah.
And then during the course of that story, like, you know, we find out that her parents, her family kind of suspected she was Miss Marvel at one point in time, and like she has like all these hangups about lying to them. It's a very classic, honestly, it's a very classic kind of Stan Lee Spider-Man type of thing that they did with her.
She's a good teen hero. She's not New York, she's in Jersey City.
Right, yeah.
It's a little smaller of a community. So it's like, she's got to go out and protect Jersey.
Right, yeah.
And then also have to deal with sort of typical high school stuff with her friends, some of which who know she is Miss Marvel, and hiding stuff from her family and all this other stuff. And
No, it actually is a fun book, and it's kind of like the little engine that could, like, in a lot of ways. Like people love it. What about you, Kyle? What was your hero of the decade?
So we've talked a little about him earlier in the show. Mine is Deadpool.
Okay.
So
totally valid.
Deadpool is, back to, story time of Kyle's childhood in the beginning of the decade. Deadpool was the hero that essentially got me into comics.
Okay.
So the first time I saw Deadpool was in Marvel Ultimate Alliance for the PS2.
Okay. Woo!
And
it's extremely valid.
Yeah.
That's a
And I remember just being struck with that hero along with him. He was just so different and than everyone else. That he wasn't this stoic or gruff sort of hero. This was just some goofball going on an adventure. And I think, and at the beginning of the decade, I would always tell people that Deadpool was my favorite hero and be like, who? And it's been very satisfying to see him rise in popularity and, in my opinion, get good treatment with getting played by Ryan Reynolds and inclusions in, like, he was in the Spider-Man Ultimate cartoon. I don't think it was called Spider-Man Ultimate.
Ultimate Spider-Man.
Ultimate Spider-Man, and I just think he's been handled really well this decade, and I've been happy to see him go through it. Yeah.
Nice.
I think he's like, I mean, I would definitely argue that he has been like the breakout of like all these X-Men movies in the last decade. Like, of all the things that ended up lasting, like, had like impact, it was Deadpool. Right, like, and I think I guess Logan would be a strong second.
Yeah,
but I think,
absolutely.
But you don't have Logan as a film without the success of Deadpool.
You don't think so? Oh, well, yeah, that's right, because it's rated R, and
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was the movie that
That is
jumped
true.
all that.
The one thing I'll give to Deadpool is that the rising popularity of Deadpool has contributed to the rising popularity of one of my favorite heroes, who is Cable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Because,
Yeah.
I don't know if Cable and Deadpool, was that this decade or was that last decade?
That was last decade,
Yeah.
but yeah. But
Yeah, that's one of my favorite books. And the fact that Deadpool has become more and more popular, and we now have Cable on screen, played by Josh Brolin,
Brolin, right,
who I thought did a great job. That Deadpool, I think, is a super valid choice.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I remember getting that little Marvel, what comic books do you want questionnaire, and I was just like, Deadpool. Here, Mom.
Beautiful.
No, so I think Deadpool definitely has had a great 10 years. Like, I think his popularity, was the video game also in this decade?
I think
don't
so. The video game was not good.
A lot of people loved it,
the
though.
Deadpool video game, that was this decade.
Yeah.
I haven't played it. I didn't hear great things.
I played it. I finished it. It sure was a video game.
It was a video
Sure
game.
exists.
Out of
It was
all the video
definitely-
games, it was one of them.
Yeah,
There you go.
it was definitely a game that I played at one point in time.
Speaking of Marvel, right? Here's a trailer for Empire from Marvel Comics. My tablet went off while we were talking here, and actually I saw a little bit that explained. This trailer didn't explain much, but I saw a little bit that explains that this is like about the Kree Skrulls joining together to take over Earth. So you won't get that from this trailer necessarily, but I think that's kind of interesting, and that's definitely coming out in 2020. So check out this trailer for Empire from Marvel Comics.
Empire is Marvel's most earth-shattering event of 2020, and will star the and against the and the
Empire grows out of a number of classic key Marvel stories, including the and a bunch of others. It is the for so many things that have been established throughout Marvel history.
It'll be written by and with art by
The story will be a true
one of the most incredible Marvel has ever put to page. And the story all kicks off this December in Incoming.
That was a not at all revealing trailer for Empire. But if you want to kind of get on the ground floor, Incoming, which is kind of the prelude book, just dropped in comic shops already. So if you're interested in this storyline, I'm actually more interested now that I know it's the Kree and the Skrulls joining forces. I think that's bananas.
Yeah.
And sounds really bad for any of the Marvel heroes. Then definitely check out Incoming, because that's going to be the precursor to Empire later in the year.
Nice.
So lightning round, right?
Yeah.
Just one last thing and then we're out of here. Comic book movie of the decade. You just can't talk about comic books in the
Without-
last 10 years
Oh, God.
without
Yeah.
talking about comic book movies,
Absolutely.
right? So
Absolutely.
around the table, Thea, I'm gonna start with you.
Honestly, Captain Marvel.
Oh, okay.
I
Nice.
had like the most reaction to that.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I'm gonna have to pick it. It was a relatable era for whatever reason,
The
right?
90s.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was born in
Never heard of
'87, so
Never heard of them.
this kid.
Enough of you, Kyle.
But yeah, so it was nostalgic while still being new, because I don't know much about Captain Marvel, so it was a glimpse into the character for me, and it made me want to go read some of the books about her and stuff. So definitely Captain Marvel for me.
All right, nice. What about you, Carrie?
I'm also gonna say Captain Marvel,
Oh,
but
wow.
because like I went into it as a big Carol Danvers fan.
Right, yeah.
I have a Captain Marvel tattoo right here. I thought it was great. I would not say it is objectively the best of the decade, but it is certainly my favorite.
Okay.
Also, Brie Larson, call me. I would also say Ant-Man is, I think,
wow.
really
Yeah, that's a
close
good
runner-up.
call.
All right.
I love the Ant-Man movies, both Ant-Man and Ant-Man and the Wasp. If you had told me at the start of the decade that Paul Rudd was going to be one of my favorite superheroes in film,
You would have told him to leave.
yeah,
Right. Get
Uh-huh,
out.
same.
Right.
I was like, that seems fake, right?
I
Like,
am
that's,
so
it's-
with you.
It still sort of sounds like an absurd concept.
All right, yeah.
But he's so good. He made Ant-Man into a character that I care about.
Yeah.
Yeah, God, those movies are so good.
yeah.
The first Ant-Man film is one that's like on television a lot, and
Right,
it's something
yeah.
where whenever it's on,
You just kinda
I
jump
just
in.
kind of
Oh,
put it on.
absolutely.
I don't care when in the movie it is. It's just like if it's on, okay, this is on my television.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
yeah. You know, I actually think I on Twitter I made a comment about, like, this was a while ago, about like how like Ant-Man has no right to be as good as it is.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a little paint by numbers, but also in a very cozy way.
Yeah.
That just kind of like gets you to kind of be like, this is fun. I like this. And I also love how they just play with the, like, the resizing of things like throughout
Yeah.
that franchise. I actually like Ant-Man and the Wasp. Like I
love that.
actually
movie
like that
too.
movie. I think it's a lot of fun.
I think what's nice about the Ant-Man films is that they sort of break convention a little bit from the other sort of more standard like superhero origin story,
Yes.
where it's like Ant-Man is a heist movie.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Ant-Man and the Wasp is a chase movie.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. No, legit.
They're flavored a little differently than the rest of the MCU, and I like that a lot.
Also, the first Ant-Man movie, I mentioned this to Johnny before. There's a sequence where he's getting shot at by and he's like running through a miniature.
Yeah.
And I didn't pick up on this until like years later, but it's the miniature house from Zoolander, where he makes that, where I think it's Zoolander says, "Is this a house for ants?"
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Like it's such a deep
Yeah.
pull.
That's so
but they
good.
do it anyway. Also,
Beautiful.
there's a solid bullet reference at the end of Ant-Man and the Wasp that I'm actually absolutely a fan of. It's on top of that. So, what about you, Kyle?
So
Superhero movie of the year?
I don't
Of
know if
the
this
decade.
counts.
Of the decade,
It's,
yeah.
it's a comic book movie, but Scott Pilgrim.
No, absolutely. It is a comic book
It's
movie.
so good.
So
It's
actually,
so good.
talking about Brie Larson, Brie Larson is
Speaking of.
central to, no joke, my favorite movie moment of all time. The scene where boyfriend number 3 gets introduced while they're on stage, and Scott and Ramona have that, wait, you know him moment as they watch him, and then then Black Sheep, that song that plays it gives me chills just thinking about it. It is such a good moment. It's like absolutely my favorite movie moment I've ever seen.
Everyone had a moment this decade where they fell in love with Brie
Oh
Larson,
yeah,
I
yeah.
think.
The decade of Brie
As
Larson.
they should.
I think, I know, I would say that Scott Pilgrim, personally, is a very good video game movie, because I would put it in that category. And it's definitely a good comic book movie. And also, since you mentioned Ant-Man, I do have to point out, Edgar Wright got his rocks off this year, like in this decade. Like, also, Baby Driver's a good movie.
Yeah.
It's not a comic book movie, but
So good.
Yeah.
So good.
I'm gonna go off the beaten path as well. I was like, I could say an MCU movie, and I think it would be expected of me. But I'm not gonna do that at all. All You Need Is Kill, which, AKA Edge of Tomorrow.
Edge of Tomorrow.
Right.
Yes.
And
That's a manga movie.
yes,
I
a
guess.
manga
Yeah.
movie, right? And like, not a lot of people realize that, but it's based off of a two-part manga. It's Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt, and it's just cool and fun, and like there's I don't want to give away too much, but I'm probably going to give away a big chunk here. But the movie plays with time a lot,
Yeah.
and it almost used time as like some sort of like warfare,
Yeah.
And like there's a bit in the movie where the film like completely throws your expectations off about halfway through, and even you as a viewer are like, wait, how much time has passed?
Yeah.
Like, what is what?
I think that is that's one of the most realistic movies I've ever seen, of just, that's the only way people could actually beat that alien menace.
Right? Yeah.
That if you had one guy who could just do it over again,
Yeah.
and just again and again and again, like that.
Like playing a video game.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
right,
Yeah.
right, yeah, yeah.
I remember walking into my college dorm, and my friends were watching that on the TV we had in there. And I was like, oh, it's just some dumb schlocky movie, and I was like, oh no, I was wrong.
Yeah, you get hooked into it really quick.
Yeah.
Once that little flip happens in the plot, like where you're like, oh, that's what this is.
Yep.
And I mean, it's sci-fi Groundhog Day, but it's done really
Yeah.
well.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, Edge of Tomorrow.
really
Yeah,
good
we
film.
didn't get like a ton of Hollywood adaptations of like manga material,
yeah.
but that's certainly the best one.
Yeah.
It's not difficult to be the best one.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It is an mystery. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I'll give a shout out to Alita too. I thought Alita was actually
Oh,
very
okay,
good.
no, Alita
Yeah.
was pretty good.
But
I'm mostly just thinking of Ghost in the Shell,
Yep.
which was
Oh, yeah.
explicitly not good.
No,
Yep.
absolutely not on that list.
Oh well.
So one
Two out of
last
three ain't
thing.
bad.
2 out of 3. And literally, there were only probably 3. Actually, there was a live action Attack on Titan, but I heard that was awful too.
Well, in Japan they do live action
All the
films
time,
based
right,
on
yeah.
anime and
But
manga.
it's still, I
frequently.
feel it still counts, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a movie that came out in the last decade.
Yeah.
It's based off a manga.
It was bad.
It was bad. There you go.
Moving on.
It's fine.
All right. Does not apply here. So I wanted to close this out. I know I already said this was the last question, but actually, this is the actual last question. At the table, what do you want to see in the new year? And I'm also going to open this up to the people watching. But like, what do you hope for the next decade? Thea?
I want to see X-Men.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
want to see more X-Men. I love where they're taking the new run, right? And I want to see that probably on film.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think that'd be cool.
I think they're doing great with comics, so bring it out to the public that don't read comics.
All right. Yeah.
Make them go read some comics, maybe.
All right. Reestablish what they are to the general audience too,
Yes.
because I
Oh
feel
yeah.
some of those movies.
Please help.
Like you said, X2's good. I think X2 is a very good X-Men movie, but they go so far off in a different direction with those films. And it's like,
Absolutely.
Fun fact, I went to a press screener of X-Men Origins Wolverine when that
Ooh.
happened.
not in this decade, right? No, that's not this
No,
decade, right?
no. I some very unfortunate memories.
Yeah.
I went in super excited for that, and by the end
Oh,
I was
really?
just like,
Oh, no.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I remember that year, I was certain.
You remember Will.i.am is in that movie?
He is in that movie. Yeah, he plays, oh God, I can't remember. Is it Maverick? I think he plays Maverick. Well, she doesn't look anything like Maverick, but whatever. I was certain that year, because I think it was like Spider-Man 3 and Nicolas Cage's Ghost Rider and Wolverine came out in the same year. And I was like, well, that's it. Comic book movies are dead.
Dead, yeah.
Yeah.
What do
They
I know?
killed him.
Right.
Right.
Turns
What
out.
is what is your hope for
My hope-
2020?
It's hard. I guess on like a personal note, like I hope that comics treat Carol Danvers a little better. Now she did become Captain Marvel this decade, which was cool. And then Civil War II happened and left a really bad taste in my mouth. And they've done some other stuff with her character and her backstory that have sort of made me go, so I hope she gets slightly better treatment. I'm also looking forward to a sequel to the film, which I think is inevitable because the first one made $1 billion.
Yeah, right.
Other than that, I mean, I hope for increased diversity and increased visibility of different races, different cultures, of the LGBT community. I hope art continues to evolve to feature different body types. And I feel like we've made a step in the right direction this decade where, not every woman looks like a Barbie doll. That's not realistic. So yeah, I hope for a continued move for increased diversity and increased inclusivity, and I hope that certain folks in certain fandoms are able to get used to that idea.
Actually, I will. So I think that actually my thing was going to be for moving past 2020 is like we've been in the ugly phase of a lot of these conversations about inclusion and diversity, and like I feel like that's ultimately what has happened there. And there was a point in time where people were like, well, we have to do this so that we can get to the good stuff. That was always the argument. I was like, my feeling was like, it should be good in the first place. That was kind of my take.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
in retrospect, like, first of all, I've heard this argument a million times. Like, there's a lot of crap out there, So everything has to go through that transition. And like, now that we're out of the ugly phase, I look forward to seeing what happens next.
Good.
So I totally co-sign that. Kyle, you're the last one. Make it good.
This isn't, Johnny mentioned it, and I totally agree, and this isn't a comic book thing, but I feel so bad for George R.R. Martin. The impossible situation he's in, given that I think I feel like the issue with that is I think people are really looking at after what is, and if you disagree with this, you're wrong, the objective disaster that was the last season of Game of Thrones. And I think there, including me, there's this reaction of to turn to him and go, you have to save us now.
Yeah.
And
It's your baby.
yeah, and this is
Fix
something
it.
that I can't even, even when the last book was completed, Game of Thrones wasn't even Game of Thrones, it was a Song of Ice and Fire. It was a completely different entity at the beginning of the decade, and now it's this international just pop culture phenomenon. Follow that up. That's what everyone is saying
No,
to him. So
absolutely,
I
yeah.
can't
So,
even imagine the pressure that is on him, and he can, I know there's so much talk about when he can finish, like
He's
when are you
just not
gonna
gonna finish. Like, at this point, he's just like, just wash my hands.
Settle my hands. Let's go do something else.
If he is going to finish, I hope he takes as long as he needs.
Well, I definitely got the impression that Benioff, actually speaking of Wolverine Origins, Benioff and Weiss, I feel like all the heat is on them. I'm not a big Game of Thrones person, but
deservedly so.
Yeah.
but because of its relation to how fandom and how fandom reacts to things, like I've kind of like become like a soft expert on at least on the culture around Game of Thrones. So yeah, I feel like the heat's mostly on them, but at the same time, like I already got the impression that George R.R. Martin wasn't at the completion phase because of all the pressure. So I can imagine it's like now 10 times harder.
But I think that it's just become this reaction of now we have it's like a cult. You have this cult of Game of Thrones fans running around who have now been like D&D have ruined their beloved franchise, so now they're just looking for the next island to sail to. And look at that, there's George R. R. Martin Isle right over there. Let's all go crowd over there as he sits in his home on his typewriter.
Quietly.
Quietly enjoying it. I'm going to make a fantasy series.
Yeah.
That'll be fun.
Well, everything I read, even he wasn't really happy about the ending. So,
Yeah.
like, I'm sure that like he already had some things in place. But,
Yeah.
Guys, thank you very much for doing this with me. I
Yeah.
know this is
Thank you for having us.
This is a long episode. I had one comment, like I think we did a 45-minute episode, like it was like the politics and comics episode.
We're all
And someone's like, this show shouldn't be 30 minutes. That was a comment. No one else said that, but like one person did. So I'm sorry for the one person. If we ran long, we definitely ran long. But regardless, even to you, I wish you a Happy New Year. I wish everyone at this table a Happy New Year. And is there anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, what do you got, Carrie?
2020 is the 50th anniversary of the Overstreet comic book price guide.
Yeah.
I feel like I neglected to mention at the start of the show. I'm the assistant editor at Gemstone Publishing.
That's okay.
And we've got a lot going on this year for Overstreet 50. In just first, we're doing a facsimile edition of the very first Overstreet comic book price guide. That's going to be hitting previews soon.
Nice.
And then we're doing a companion book, and then we're doing a bunch of different covers to Overstreet 50. We've got a lot to look forward to this year with Overstreet, because 50 is a big deal.
Yeah, right.
You don't get to 50 years in anything,
Right.
without being good at what you do.
Right,
And,
no, that's
Bob's
fair.
been doing it for 50 years.
That's very true, yeah.
I can't imagine doing anything for 50 years.
Right, yeah. No, that's very real. Bob
Yeah.
has been doing it
Yeah.
for 50 years.
Yeah.
And like, I guess, that's going to be around San Diego Comic-Con when
The Overstreet 50 drops at San Diego Comic-Con this year, so
there you
look
go.
for us there.
There you go. Kyle, you want to plug anything?
Well, you can find me here, editing away. You can comment "Thanks, Kyle" under all the Previews World videos. And
There you go. That's actually, technically, you won't find Kyle
Yeah,
here. He'll
yeah,
be
it's
over
true.
there.
Yeah.
But,
But you can also follow me on Instagram at RobeyKJ. I'm sure I'll edit in a little lower third over here. And that's what I'm doing. I post all my little doodles there. So,
Yeah.
your ego's out of control.
yep, my ego's out of control. They give me, they let me out one time.
They put you on this side of the camera
Yep.
once.
Yeah.
Right.
He
He's
takes
like,
off with
Here's
it.
my mixtape. And
Follow me on SoundCloud.
Thea, you want to plug anything?
I just want to remind everyone about Comic Shop Shoutout.
Yes, that's true.
Just because we're at the end of the show and it's a thing we do. So if you guys want to have your favorite local comic shop shouted out on the show, be sure to let us know who they are. Use the hashtag #SupportYourLCS and you could get a feature.
Cool. And that's it for Previews World Weekly this week. I've been one of your hosts, Troy Jeffrey Allen.
I'm Thea.
And
I'm Kyle.
And I'm Carrie.
And we'll see you at the spinner rack.